Welcome to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz. This episode of Green Time, we're going to be talking about sustainable hog and cattle raising. We've done some previous shows on problems with confined animal feeding operations. This show we're going to focus on how can you do it right. First of all, let's see a new segment of Pig Business.
Alicia Samley's farm has been in her family for generations.
Nasza produkcja świń nie będzie się opłacała, dlatego że powstawają duże fermy i one produkują bardzo dużo świń. W krótkim czasie mają pasze z różnymi dodatkami, dlatego świnie rosną krótko, nasze rosną pół roku i dlatego nie będzie się opłacać. Jak będą ceny spadać coraz niżej, to produkcja w ogóle nie będzie opłacalna. To właśnie się nie podoba, bo duże gospodarstwa mają im więcej hektarów, tym więcej dopłat.
A lot of the European officials are saying that the Polish farmers are too small. They've only got 18 hectares. What's too small about that?
They want to sweep them aside so larger operators can take over and everything will be eventually owned by the corporations, I think.
And what do you think will happen to Poland as a result of that?
If Poland's family farmers are exterminated, as it were, it will destroy Poland's culture and, as far as that goes, its soul.
So it seems that economic development is not being determined by the needs of people, but by the need for companies to grow and compete in the global market. And believe it or not, you and I are helping to fund this. The European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which is funded by governments, lent Smithfield $25 million to facilitate another $75 million from private banks.
Smithfield benefited from a $100 million loan that was organized by the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. This is taxpayers' money that's being applied to the expansion of Smithfield.
We have a mandate, and this mandate is to promote transition in the former communist countries. We are not driven only by financial profit, but because we are driven by trying to set the way, basically trying to have a catalyst effect. And in that way, bring along with us then the private banks.
The whole mission of the European Bank has been to industrialize Central and Eastern European agriculture. No question about that, and that has the effect of pushing out small farmers and independent farmers, and also the effect of opening it up to take over by foreign corporations.
So the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development has government officials from 60 countries on its board. So it sets the development pattern. But for who? For you and I, the electorate, the consumer, or for giant corporations and the private banks that invest in them?
I moim zdaniem to jest również przejaw pewnej nieuczciwej konkurencji w stosunkach międzynarodowych. Polscy rolnicy produkujący żywność znacznie wyższej jakości, lepsze, mają o wiele większe problemy i trudności z dostępem do łatwych, tanich kredytów na rozwój swoich gospodarstw, czyli tu konkurencja nie jest równoprawna. Śmiem twierdzić, że ta konkurencja jest konkurencją zaburzoną.
I wanted to find out who's driving this economic ideology which promotes big business at the expense of small farms. So I went to see economist Bernard Lietaer, a former central banker and successful currency trader, now a university professor.
The financial institutions are running the show. The governments are all indebted to them. In the United States, a third of all contributions to political campaigns are done by the financial institutions. So there's no chance that they will change the rules of the game. I would compare the money system as a ring that we put through our nose, and it leads us where it wants to go. We forgot that we created the ring and that we put it there.
So this taxpayer-funded restructuring and modernization effectively means the end to family farming, which produces good animal husbandry, good quality food, satisfying work, and protects the environment. When I revisited Bolesław's Grodziec, he explained how powerless he felt in the face of the advance of industrial agriculture.
My nie mamy żadnego wpływu na to, że ta firma nam szkodzi. Nawet na dobrą sprawę nie mamy gdzie się poskarżyć, że ta firma robi nam krzywdę. No, a to wynika tylko z tego, że ta firma jest duża, że jest ogromna. Gdyby ona była mniejsza, pewnie jej wpływy byłyby mniejsze. Właśnie to bardzo dobrze to powiedział. To jest ta ogromna korporacja, która gdzieś tam przyjechała. Dla nas to jest dosłownie, to jest inwazja. No. To jest pająk, który siedzi na całej kuli ziemskiej. Widać, w jaki sposób, czym jest ta globalizacja. To jest coś ogromnego, które wysysa soki z tej ziemi, z ludzi. To jest taki ogromny pająk, pasożyt taki, który żeruje tutaj na nas.
In 2008, Polish farmers were on the streets again.
Będziemy żądali zamknięcia tych dużych ferm w Polsce, no i tego dzikiego importu.
Oczywiście dzisiaj największym problemem w produkcji trzody chlewnej jest największa korporacja na świecie, jaką jest Smithfield Woods, który przejął polski Animex w roku 99.
30% niżej cen kosztów produkcji dostajemy teraz. Czyli dokładamy z własnych kieszeni, żeby sprzedać, żeby utrzymać nasze rodziny, to musimy, nie wiem skąd, teraz musimy chyba jechać do Anglii albo do Irlandii, zarabiać, wszystko pozamykać.
Nie wiem, czy pójdę na emeryturę, czy się powieszę, czy co zrobię, czy wyjadę.
So-called cheap meat from factory farms has flooded every market in the EU. And Smithfield has ambitious distribution plans for the UK. In 2008, its web page, using a bit of artistic license with a pig on grass, announced their aim to dominate, or in their own words, to be the preferred supplier to the UK retail and food service industry. To you and me, that's restaurants, schools, prisons, hospitals, etc. So I went to America to check out what Britain's supermarkets could look like. Smithfield, loads and loads and loads of Smithfield food dominating the pork section.
Welcome back to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz. We just saw an episode from the DVD Pig Business. With me in the studio, I have Darvin Bentlage. Darvin, you've been on the show a couple of times before talking about problems with CAFOs. Yeah. And remind the audience, where do you farm?
Farm up in Barton County, Missouri.
Barton County, Missouri. And you're with Missouri Rural
Crisis Center, okay. Missouri Coalition for the Environment, and I'm also a member of the Missouri Farmers Union.
Fantastic. Now tell us, was there anything about this portion of the movie Pig Business that you would like to comment on, or you had any thoughts about?
Well, a lot of this stuff, people got to realize these CAFOs or factory farms are highly subsidized by the taxpayer, both through the EQIP programs where they get money to actually build the facilities, get half their costs paid to build these facilities, which translates to pork's not cheap. Then also they can get FSA guaranteed loans, which are designed to help individual farmers to get loans when they can't get it somewhere else. The problem with this is the CAFOs have jumped in there and had the contract growers get these loans to benefit the corporations.
So these loans that we hear about to help farmers, most of them are not to help people like you who have a small family farm. Are you saying that most of those loans go to the big businesses?
Lots of them, the big bulk, loans go to the big businesses. They will help farmers out, but a lot of the times, if they've got a corporation, they're dependent on this contract with this corporation to pay off that loan. They could go to a bank and get that same loan and have the corporation sign their name on the dotted line just along with that farmer. That would protect that farmer from them jerking the contract out from underneath him.
Okay. Now tell me, a lot of people will say, well, we need these confined animal feeding operations in order to produce enough pork to satisfy the consumer. Now, how much have these CAFOs really helped them?
We're not producing any more pork than we were back in the 1960s. The only thing we're doing it with less farmers. They've driven farmers, gotten out of business. They've taken away the auction barns, which used to be the lifeblood of a livestock farmer to go sit in the auction barn, watch his stuff sell. They've gotten rid of competitive bidding where you've only got one or two people bidding on your product at an auction barn. Why, there's not much incentive for them to pay higher.
Right.
They've got a captive supply to supply their retailers.
But this has brought the price of pork down. Isn't that a good thing to have cheaper pork?
Well, what's the price of pork? It's costing the taxpayer money. It's taking
so-
it's taking money out of the rural economies from driving out to auction barns, the feed stores, the local farmers that would buy locally. All this money in these concentrated operations, such as Premium Standard Farms, which is owned by Smithfield, that goes to the Smithfield office. That doesn't stay here in Missouri.
Now, so would it be correct to say that when we think we have cheaper pork, actually a portion of that we're actually paying through taxes? And so when you see the cost per pound in the store, you may think that's the only thing that you're paying, but you're actually paying other places too.
Oh yeah, you're paying all across the board, taxes and like I say, it takes out of the rural economy, and stores close. You have to drive farther to get your supplies and everything. So yeah, it's not cheap by any means. They're taking a lot of the prices, a lot of the income off the farm and putting it in the packer's hand.
Okay.
And so the farmer's share of pork has gone down considerably since 1980 or so.
Okay. Now, one of the big questions is, how do we raise cattle and pork sustainably in Missouri? Let's take a break now, and in just a minute we're going to come back and talk about that.
A handful of multinational corporations like Cargill, Monsanto, and Walmart have run roughshod over the American people for too long, determining what we can buy and dictating how farmers can produce it. Decades of bad farm policy and unchecked corporate mergers have created a powerful corporate factory farm system and agribusiness giants, and I think we're all familiar with that.
2 out of 3 hogs are now slaughtered by 4 companies. In the same period of time, 20 years, in the pork industry, we lost 70% of the hog farmers. Well, we didn't just lose them. They didn't just fall off the face of the earth. We kept the production the same. We simply replaced 70% of independent family hog farmers with corporate factory farms. Not good.
No, that ain't right.
Not good. Between 1985 and 2008, pork prices to consumers went up by 72%. Now, that's not that cheap. At the same time, the hog farmer's share of that consumer dollar went down by 43%. So somebody in this industry, in this consolidation process, is definitely getting rich. It's working for somebody. It's just not working for producers, and it's not working for consumers.
That's right.
USDA needs to immediately suspend all loans to specialized hog and poultry facilities that are adding to the already overproduced marketplace, which is driving down prices to family farmers. And USDA, if not Congress, needs to ban packers from owning livestock and ensure that all livestock can be traded on an open public marketplace, and that's not true today.
I want to talk about power. People power. We are in a pitched battle. Labor, family farms, democratic rights are in a pitched battle against the dictatorship of capital. That's what we're talking about. Capital is running dictatorship over the people. We got to understand that this is an international struggle. Those Mexican workers coming up here are family farmers. Those Sudan workers working in the packing plants are family farmers and workers being driven off by big dictatorship of capital. We have to understand that we are not alone in America.
The corporatization of our food system has meant the decline of the family farm, which has been a national calamity for our entire economy. It has meant less access to fresh and safe food. It has meant a lack of freedom for the American people. You destroyed the family farm. You really destroyed the American ideal of personal economic independence. And so you have corporations who control food supplies, the way food is made, and who grows it.
We, as consumers, can take back control of our food economy by deciding what sort of farming system we want to support. However, I couldn't find any high welfare pork labels in a typical American supermarket. Water added, but nothing about how the pig has been raised. Thankfully, the Whole Foods supermarket sells pork from high welfare farms. No antibiotics ever, no added hormones ever, all vegetarian feeds. And the important thing about this is if you want to know more, it says, read more about our humane animal practices at nymanranch.com. However, supermarkets don't supply local produce. So if you want to connect directly to your farmer, go to your farmer's market. We're interested in pork.
Okay.
Could you just please tell us how you raise your pork?
Well, I mean, it's all pasture raised, and they are pigs. They don't eat just grass. You know, they root around, they eat everything. There's no hormones, no antibiotics, certified humane handling. We like to say it's beyond organic, but it's good stuff.
Yeah. So how do you know to trust this compared to at the supermarket?
Well, I can look in the eyes of the person who might be poisoning me. I have no idea where my meat at the supermarket came from.
That's right. This is all locally grown, supporting local farmers. It's raised naturally as pigs should be raised.
Part of the puzzle is that people buy locally. That is a very potent form of activism, to say to the Walmarts of the world, we're not going to buy from you. We're going to buy in the local farmers market. You also need to sue the polluters. You need to demand your government enforce the law against them. You need to pass legislation that makes it very clear that they can't come into your communities and displace, you know, the traditions and the values that your country holds dear. And all of us, you know, we had an American Revolution in this country to create democracy. We need a new American Revolution in this country now to fight against the corporate feudalism that we are now dealing with, that is embodied so much by this industry, that is eroding everything and subverting everything that we care about in our democracy.
Welcome back to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz here with Darvin Bentlage. And Darvin, you're with Missouri Rural Crisis Center as well as several other organizations, and you also own a family farm in Missouri.
Yes.
Between Springfield and Joplin. Now tell me, what is your idea of sustainable hog and cattle raising? What would you do different than some of these huge, enormous confined animal feeding operations?
Well, sustainability is mainly you're not dependent on any outside source to keep your operation going, other than selling your product. You can produce all your feedstocks there on your farm. You use
your feedstocks. What would that include?
That would include any grain, hay, or your replacement livestock.
Okay. So in other words, if a farmer who's raising hogs or cattle would also have a farm where he's raising the hay and the corn,
right? As
opposed to just having the hogs concentrated, so the hogs would not be concentrated in such a small area.
Right. We're pretty sustainable as far as our cattle operation goes. We raise all the hay, all the grain. We don't buy from outside sources for much of anything. We're not completely sustainable, but we're as close as we can get. And that holds our costs down and makes it more productive. On the hog end, while you're keeping your replacement stuff, you're pretty much a unit amongst yourselves. Where the CAFOs, they have to buy their feed from an outside source. Many times bring in the replacement animals from an outside source. You got to keep it.
By replacement animals, you mean like if you're like if you have too few cattle, they would have to buy cattle from someplace else. But if you were doing it sustainably, you would raise your own cattle and you would breed your cattle as well as raising them.
Yes. Well, you got to keep in mind that the sows in these CAFOs only last about a year, and then
really?
they have to keep replacing them. And a normal sow raised in a sustainable operation outdoors in hoop barns or on straw and everything, the normal sow will last 5 to 6, sometimes 8 years. And so they're constantly have a constant turnover. Well, you can't not in one area raise those replacement gilts to come and have a totally sustainable on your own operation.
So why would a sow last only 1 year if it's in a confined animal feeding operation?
The animals are given hormones to superovulate to produce more pigs, and at a timely schedule. They're on a schedule. They're not on Mother Nature's schedule. They're on a chemically induced schedule. And the stress, like I said earlier, hogs are extremely smart. You put them in stressful areas, just like us being under stress all the time, you age 3 times as fast.
Okay, so it may be more cost effective in the sense that the sow can start giving birth at a younger age in a CAFO, but the sow may actually live a shorter period of time.
Sure, and that adds to the cost on the CAFO, you know, because you're having to replace your herd every year or year and a half.
Okay, what could you tell us about the treatment of animals that you think would be part of sustainability? How would that be different in the sort of farm that you have?
Well, they're out doing what God intended them to do. If you've ever gone to farmers markets are a great thing. You can go look the guy that raised your meat in the eye, and he can tell you how it's raised. There's no hormones, no antibiotics given to them. If you've ever
and in the CAFOs, they are constantly giving the animals hormones and antibiotics, not just to protect them from disease, but also to make them grow faster.
Yeah, some of the antibiotics are used as growth hormone. One antibiotics in chickens, it's not an antibiotic, but it's actually arsenic.
Arsenic?
Yes, to help the chickens grow faster.
So we get that if we eat chicken? I mean, I don't think cooking's going to destroy arsenic.
Well, you can handle, they tell you can handle small doses of it, but you know.
But you don't want to be eating chicken every day. It sounds like it's probably not a good idea.
Well,
that doesn't sound sustainable.
It's not sustainable, but it's unresponsible.
Okay.
Let's say that. You know, it's they can get by with it. We absorb it. You know, lots of people get certain types of poisoning, just sign it off as a case of the flu. You know, if you get something from eating some bad meat, well, I got a flu bug or something.
So a lot of people might. Are you saying a lot of people might be having bad reactions to meat that is not raised sustainably, and just attribute it to some other health problem?
Well, not necessarily, but the concentration of meat packers, these huge plants. You know, most of your USDA inspected is paper inspected. It's not actually.
They don't go in and actually look at the animals.
They pull out samples off the line every now and then, you know. But most of it's rubber stamped by the paperwork and everything. And the FDA has no power to force recalls. They really suggest them, and it's usually up to the company to do this.
So when we hear a recall of meat, it's not from the FDA.
No, it's usually the FDA's knows there's a problem, and it usually comes from the company, because if they don't do that, why it gets traced back to that packing plant that it came from.
Okay. Well, Darvin Bentlage, thank you very much for being on this episode of Green Time and sharing your knowledge with us. Thank everybody for tuning into this episode of Green Time, and I really hope that you look at this station a week from now and look at the next episode.